I am especially excited to be here tonight. I want to thank you all for coming, but I'm also super nervous because we do have a special guest here tonight.
Before we do that, can we send a shout out to your marketing?
Yes. Jessica. And stand up. Come on. And her partner, who did a wonderful job and got up in these costumes and were lovely, and I'm really appreciative. I'm sorry, you're absolutely right. All week long, yes. And I don't envy anybody putting on that makeup all week long. I don't know. So I really thank you so much, and it's been a pleasure working with the two of you. And stay in touch. So without further ado, we do have a special guest. With us from Miami Beach is Jobriath's former manager, Jerry Brandt. So, how do you want to start this?
Well, I would like to get Jerry's response to the film.
Okay.
And then we can open this up to questions.
Oh my God. I didn't realize it did all that. I thought it was quite good. I thought I took a heavy rap sometimes. Other than that, I thought it was wonderful.
Thank you. Questions?
None? Yeah, in the blue? Over there?
Mr. Brandt, was God speaking to you with Jobriath?
Absolutely. Yeah. I was enthralled by him. I thought he was a genius, and I just did what I did. The music didn't sell. That was the bottom line. All the other people who have their opinions were not in the trenches. So, but yes, to answer your question.
In the white?
Was he influenced by Bowie, or is that something that you kind of guided him toward? Because
I didn't guide, image-wise, I didn't guide him at all. He guided me. I'm a heterosexual, so I don't think gay. So I don't know what a true fairy is. Couldn't make up those lines if I tried. So I just followed his lead when it came to that stuff. It was all him. And he was influenced by Bowie. Everybody was.
I'll get to you next. In the black t-shirt?
Jobriath was obviously surrounded by sweet people.
Sweet?
Yeah.
Sweet people. All his friends and the people that are interviewed clearly loved him. And yet he still had this insecurity, part of which was understandable because of his relationship with his mother. Did he confide in you any of his reasons for being?
I didn't know anything about his family.
You didn't see any of the darkness at all?
Oh, I saw a lot of darkness. I mean, he was an alcoholic. He was an addict. I don't know what kind of drugs he was on, but if I didn't protect him, he'd be in jail or kill somebody or be killed. He was just an addictive personality.
I just want to say something to add to that. You know, we did allude to some of that in the film, Watch Your Foot. And a lot of I did encounter some, and you're right, he did have a lot of sweet people who really loved him. And one of the issues that I had was people felt very protective of him, and they were afraid to say dark things about him. And of course, the minute the camera was turned off, they would pull me to the side and say, "Let me tell you what happened," and which frustrated me because it felt like gossip after that, and I didn't want to hear it. If you didn't want to tell it to me on the camera, if you didn't want to share the story, I didn't want to hear about it privately. But it really did corroborate a lot of the stuff, a lot of the problems that Jerry did go through, because Jobriath did cause a lot of trouble because of his excesses and because of his mental and emotional problems. And he was really breaking down at the time, and I was told about suicide attempts, and I was told about, just complete, absolute mental breakdowns. But people were just so afraid. And I hesitate to sort of share that because it feels like gossip to me, even just telling it to you. But I only want to say it because Jerry also did have that to contend with. And I wish that we were able to make more of a point about that it wasn't just, I think it's really easy to make it, to put Jerry on the spot and make him a scapegoat. And I felt going in that that Jerry was not to blame. But there wasn't any one thing to blame. It was this perfect storm of all these different things that came together that caused this, failure, or this thing that was just, it was a failure, but it was also ahead of its time, and that's why it failed. But there were so many different things, and to put Jerry on the spot or to blame him, I think is just incredibly reductive. And there were a lot of people out there who were friends of Jobriath who really did want to blame Jerry, and because of course they were hurting, they saw their friend get hurt, and it's very easy to just point a finger. But at the end of it, even at the end of the experience of interviewing all of these people and going through this for several years, I came out of it feeling the exact same way that I went in, and that is that it was much too complicated to really blame it on one thing. So, yes?
Yeah, Jobriath, Kieran, it's a wonderful film.
Thank you.
I'm curious, how did you come to discover Jobriath?
I had always sort of heard of Jobriath. I'm a little young to have been around the first time around. Not that young, but a little young. But I am a huge music fan. Love music. Grew up loving music, and grew up really into history and 70s history and gay and lesbian history, which is hugely important to me. And I had always heard of Jobriath growing up, but it was always a sort of a joke. You'd read a little blurb about him, and it was always very much like the headline said, the fag end of glam rock. And because there was no music to hear, because it was out of print, I kind of believed it, and I just sort of dismissed it. And about 4 or so years ago, I was on Amazon and buying something, and something came up recommending this compilation CD that Morrissey had put out on his own label of Jobriath's music. And I thought, oh wow, there's actually something to hear. So I took a chance and I ordered it, and I listened to it, and I thought, wow, there's actually talent here. He wasn't some joke. So then I started researching, and the more that I read, the more fascinated I became, and I wanted to know everything. And I've never made a documentary before, and it wasn't something that I was even thinking about doing. I was very close to making my second feature. And I was captured, and that project sort of fell by the wayside, and I thought, great, it's divine intervention, because now I've got the time to work on this, and I did, and I just devoured everything I could find. I took 14 months to research and find enough people that would be willing to talk to me, and I was still looking for people and still finding people the entire 2.5 years we were shooting, and still finding archival material. That wonderful interview with Jobriath and Jerry was just a complete accident, and I found it while we were editing, and it was great to have it in there. I was so worried about the dearth of archival footage, because he really didn't talk a lot to the press, and it was such a short period of time where his star kind of shone and then sputtered out, that there wasn't a lot of stuff that was done. And so to try and unearth these things, I think I pretty much got everything that was there. But I was very worried about that, and I didn't want it to be a talking head documentary. It's one of the reasons why I did the animation pieces. And of course I also wanted to be able to recreate the Paris Opera House show for Jobriath that he never got to perform. Because talking to all these people, that was really sort of the heartbreak of his life, because he really kind of felt that would have changed people's perceptions. And the fact that he wasn't able to do it really broke his heart. And so I wanted to be able to give that to him, in some small way. Anybody else? Yes?
You've obviously said that it's complicated, and clearly it is, but do you feel that the world just wasn't ready, and that if it was a different time, that it would have been a success?
Me or Jerry?
Well, Jerry.
That's a complicated question. Being too early is like being too late. It's a failure. I thought he was right on time. The venue might have been wrong now that I look at it from this point of view, meaning I think he's more of a Broadway personality. His music is structured not for rock and roll. His lyrics aren't rock and roll. I wish that Joe Papp would have did something with him. It's complicated. Success is very complicated. And so is failure.
I just wanted to add to that I was really surprised that a gay audience or the gay community didn't embrace him.
I was shocked.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely does make sense until you start to research
You scared
it.
them.
Yeah, you know, and because everybody, I mean, I thought it was 4 years post Stonewall, New York, and you know, Warhol was happening, and sexual freedom was happening, and Bowie and bisexuality, and great, what a great idea. And every gay man that I spoke to, who you know, who I interviewed that lived back then, said no. Everybody was moving into masculinity, and they were terrified of anybody who smacked of effeminacy or what they perceived as looking weak to a heterosexual audience. And that just kind of floored me, and I never expected that, you know, anybody to tell me that, and for everybody to tell me that, it was really kind of a shock. So, I mean, he really was like a dead man walking. I mean, nobody was interested in what he was selling. You know, the gay audience hated him, the straight audience hated him, and I mean, it's a miracle you got anything done at all.
And if you think about like the Village people that became a little after, they were kind of caricatures of you know, so it was more.
They were
palatable. You know, maybe the public could take that better.
But again, they did not say that they were gay, and that is the big deal. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I mean, you know, look at some of the artists that have come out now, and their biggest fans still, you know, refuse to believe it after they said it.
But I believe that music transcends
Sexuality.
Everything, and they didn't embrace his music. They didn't give him a chance, and there's no one to blame in the inner circle for that.
No, I agree. The music is not incredibly accessible. I don't think that even if, you know, they were doing cartwheels down the street for the True Fairy of Rock and Roll, were these songs going to hit the top of the chart? They just were not 3-minute accessible pop songs.
Right.
You know, but I mean, there was a lot of music back then that wasn't. You know, that was still popular.
Mama Man was a great pop song for that time.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Yes.
Jerry, did the film enlighten you in any way or tell you anything you didn't already know?
I think so.
Great question. Yeah, very good question.
Yeah, how many people that didn't like me? But I'm a big boy, so I didn't realize that people perceived me as destructive, you know. And I realized also that I shouldn't have did the sets without music in front, without a hit record. And like I said, looking back at the music, which is the core of the whole show, and him, his music was not rock and roll. It was Broadway. And that I learned through this.
I think something that we learned, Kieran and I learned from our last viewing of this, the last audience, is that we found Jerry to be a sympathetic character. I don't think that anybody thought in that first screening that you were the bad guy.
No, they didn't.
I thought I was.
You thought you were. So I thought that was a great. I thought that was a great testament to you, but it was also a great testament to the film. That I really thought it was even-handed.
Well, one doesn't like to hear people say bad things about them. But I thought it was at times funny and times sad. You know, so.
Yeah, I mean, we've been pretty much lucky in that. I mean, I shouldn't say lucky, but it's been great. You know, the audiences that I've shown it to, there haven't been that many. We made our world premiere in London. We did 3 screenings there, and then we've done the 2 here, and that's, you know, we've really just started out. But all the audiences in London were the same way. I mean, you know, I actually asked because I was really curious, and I actually said, everybody raised their hand who thought, you know, Jerry was the villain, and you know, hardly anybody raised their hand. Well, but what I'm saying is, you know, the audience actually is really on your side, and I'm really happy about that because I really took pains to you know, I mean, truth be told, you know, did you do things wrong? I think you did, but did you do them? Did you do them maliciously? No, absolutely not. And so, you know, I mean,
I did my job.
You did your job.
Yeah.
What I thought was my job, I did it. His job was in the studio. My job was outside. I was the purveyor of music and his image. And I thought I did it very well, considering he didn't do anything. His music didn't sell. I forced him on the national TV show, and I still kept it alive through all that. So,
is that where things took the big wrong turn?
I don't know where it took a big wrong. I think I shouldn't have started it in the first place.
Okay.
That's not true. I'm very proud of him, his music, and my job in it.
Two things. One, where did you find the footage from the Chelsea Hotel, from the Chelsea Hotel? And two, Jerry, you say, well, music can transcend anything. In '74, the social political times, I was in Paris when Nixon resigned, and Americans were not liked at all. So there's a lot of political, I think, play into that too.
I don't think so.
You answer that one first because I'll come back to you.
I don't think so. We were in Paris. I took them to Paris, and they just adored him. And we stayed at the Place Antoine, and they comped us day and night. They gave us free rooms, free food. No, the problem was radio didn't play his music, you know. And that's the bottom line. If you don't get your music played, people can't buy it, people can't like it. And the critics were awful. They never gave him a chance. What was the other part of your question?
About the footage. Yeah, that I can answer. And then I have a question for you, actually. I mean, I know that we talked about before, but that footage of Cole Berlin is actually from a BBC documentary that was done in 1980 about the Chelsea Hotel. So it's an hour-long doc, and you know, Jobriath was just one of several people that they interviewed. So lucky us, actually, to have gotten that. Anybody else? Question? Yes.
More for you. I was really, being a fan since like 1974, I was really astounded as to how much unreleased music existed that showed up in this film. Who's in charge of it, and who do we write to get it released?
Oh, that's such a
Is that Jobriath?
yeah. That's such a tangle. I mean, it's
Well, I own the music, so.
of the two albums. Yeah. But there's other stuff. There's there's a lot of stuff in there that you guys didn't hear that I came across. Stuff from I found 2 demos. He had written a musical called Pop Star, which was sort of a thinly veiled retelling of the Jerry and Jobriath story. Okay.
I'm hoping that this thing takes off, this documentary, so I can go back in the studio and re-release the albums. And I might do it under just JB, which is not Jerry Brandt, it's Jobriath Boone. Because I think the publicity did hurt him a lot. You know, of course he didn't live up to it. So it was difficult for him. But I do believe this music will eventually rise, because you cannot keep it down. Eventually it will seek its own level.
I have a question for the audience. How many of you, before you came to see this, even had heard of Jobriath or knew about him?
1, 2.
2. Okay, 3. All right, great. Well, that's terrific. I mean, I'm thrilled about that. I mean, I one of the reasons why I made this movie is
I'm
because
shocked.
people don't know who he is, and I wanted to be able to bring his music and his story to a larger audience. So the fact that people are curious about it and coming out to see it and not knowing who he is fantastic.
So
Just wonderful.
what is the hope? I mean, Jerry's talking about re-releasing the music. Is there a Broadway show here?
I think there is.
Yeah.
I think there is a
we just saw
musical.
we just saw hologram Tupac brought back.
I do think there's a hit album in there. I think there's music in there. I think there's a Broadway show, and I think there's a movie in it. I think it's all there. It's just a question of time now. I think the time is right for him now, for some reason.
I'm a little less optimistic. Only because
My job is to be optimistic.
yeah, only because I know what I do marketing for like my day job, film marketing and entertainment marketing, and I just kind of feel like I don't know that all of those things will happen. My feeling is let's just take it as it comes and let's see if anybody even wants to see the movie. And you know what I mean? And if that does happen and it does take off, that would be lovely. But I don't think we're going to be manufacturing Jobriath bobblehead dolls anytime soon. It would be great, but let's just take it one step at a time. Is how I feel about it. Yes.
Way back, yeah. Kieran, do you have any plans for making a feature, or does anyone that you know of? Because the story, the Jerry Brandt, Jobriath, that story is just so rich.
Well, I actually do hold the life rights for Jobriath, not for Jerry per se, but for Jobriath. I mean, I got them, signed over to me by the family for to do a movie of, but. The reason I did that was I didn't need it for the documentary, but just to sort of protect myself, I decided to take, like go one step further and do it. So that means that I hold them for a feature film if I want to so pursue one. I think it would actually be really cool, but like again, I think Velvet Goldmine really kind of showed us what the limitations for anything kind of glam rock 70s is in the marketplace. So I don't know. I don't know that anybody would want to put money into it. I think it would make a great story. I can see it like being the Ken Russell movie that Ken Russell never made, and I really do. And I would love to be part of it. I would love to do it, and I would do a fucking amazing job of it too. And I've fantasized about it, but I haven't even I won't even entertain the thought of even going in and writing a script yet,
Well, if
because
you win an Oscar.
I'm so afraid of sort of getting my hopes up for it. So I'm trying to really be very realistic about what happens. I like that I've got the rights, that it's sort of with me. So
Funny thing was, a lot of times, Jobriath looked a lot like Ewan McGregor's character.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I wanted to interview Todd Haynes for the movie because I don't know how many people here know Velvet Goldmine very well, but the character of whatever the character that Jonathan Rhys Meyers played, I'm sorry, I can't. Oh, Maxwell Demon, I think it was. If you look at the album cover, it's a direct steal from the first Jobriath album cover. And, Maxwell Demon's character sort of laying across the thing. And I also think that the Eddie Izzard character, the manager, is a combination of Jerry and Andrew Luke Oldham and
That's who you have to have in this.
And and the manager of Bowie, Tony DeFries. So I absolutely think that Haynes was influenced by several glam rock people that he doesn't seem to want to acknowledge, which is ridiculous because it's an homage film. No one's going to accuse him of ripping it off, but there's definite Jobriath in there, absolutely. Somebody was over here? Yes.
What is Heather McRae doing today, and also
Getting
about Brian's
Sorry.
family? Weren't there two other brothers?
There are two other brothers. One of them's deceased, and then the other one is living in I think Pennsylvania or Maryland. I can't remember. I'm in touch with. I'm in touch with the family. Obviously, I'm in touch with Willie. Jerry, his younger brother, didn't want to talk about him and didn't want to, just didn't want to go on camera. I've heard from both from the nieces, and they've been super supportive and are very excited to see this. We are going to be playing in Philadelphia, so I'm hoping to bring the whole family out to see it then, and maybe get people to come up and do Q&A and stuff. But and Heather, I'm sorry. Heather is living in New York. It's hard to keep in touch with her because she doesn't have a computer or just got a computer and just got email. So, and then you'd call her and she'd be like, "What?" She's very, very grouchy, if she doesn't know who you are or whatever. But when you get her, it's just email was made for Heather, so I'm very happy she has it. But she's doing a cabaret in New York and sort of semi-retired. I think she did a show a couple of years ago. But everybody was lovely that I talked to. Everybody really was excited and happy and looking forward to sharing their memories of Jobriath, and incredibly grateful for that. So
Let's take one more question.
Oh, darn it.
Sure.
Did you get Henry Rollins to narrate this?
I did.
How did that happen? Because you don't normally associate Henry Rollins with this genre.
I asked him. It was. I'm not meaning to make light. That's how easy it was. And we showed him some clips from the movie, and he wasn't incredibly familiar with Jobriath when he decided to do it. But in the time between when he agreed to do it and the time that we got into the studio, I think he went online and researched everything there was to know about Jobriath, because all he wanted to do was sit and talk about Jobriath instead of record. I was like, got an hour. We have 1 hour to record this, Henry. And then he's like he'd do a line, then he'd stop and he'd go, it was too much too soon, man, wasn't it? And you're like, yeah, we can talk about it later. But he's just so into it now, and he's really excited and is like a super uber Jobriath fan now. But he's always been somebody. The reason I thought he would be a good choice is because he's always been somebody who's really championed very obscure artists, and this is probably the most obscure artist or one of them. And so I thought that his voice would be and add a certain kind of cred to it, and he did a great job. So I am going to take one more question because she had her hand up. So go ahead.
Thank you. That was actually one of my questions.
Oh,
Henry
well,
Rollins.
All right, great.
My second question is actually directed to Mr. Brandt.
Come here.
Thank you for being here.
Yes.
It's very awesome for you to be here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. What is your involvement with the music industry today? And
Slim to none.
Slim to none. Do you have any thoughts about what's going on today with digital and all that?
Yes, I'm preparing I'm trying to sell a TV series called Sweat Equity, which is about a runaway kid with a saxophone who runs away from the Midwest to New York and forms a jazz trio, blah, 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 blah. So it's like in the neighborhood, in the hood glee.
It's awesome. Cool,
Well, thank you guys so much. I mean, this has been a huge, huge, huge thrill. This is probably a highlight of this festival.
Thank you.
Kieran. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. Great question.